The nose-booping incident happened at 0847 station time, which Diana Kowalski felt was somehow appropriate. Mid-morning disasters were the worst kind, not catastrophic enough to cancel the day entirely, but too significant to pretend they hadn't happened. The kind of moderately terrible things that made you question your life choices while simultaneously being too mundane to complain about. Although, in Diana's defense, accidentally starting an intergalactic incident was probably beyond mundane. It had started 3 weeks earlier with a message marked Priority, Diplomatic Assignment, that appeared in her inbox at 600 hours, which was military speak for, Your career is about to get weird. Lieutenant Diana Kowalski, hand-to-hand combat instructor for Earth's Colonial Defense Force, was being offered an incredible opportunity to participate in the Galactic Concordat's cultural exchange program. The message used the word volunteer 17 times, which Diana recognized as administrative code for this is not optional. 23 days later, she found herself on Space Station Harmony 7, standing in what the aliens called a training facility, and what Diana called a room that had heard about gyms but never actually met one. Everything was aggressively sterile, color-coded within an inch of its life, and labeled in so many languages that the warning signs had warning signs. Human instructor Kowalski, announced combat theorist Jakar, who looked like a praying mantis had gotten a PhD and grown an extra pair of arms to carry all its dissertations. I have prepared a comprehensive presentation detailing 17 theoretical scenarios involving graduated aggressive response patterns. Diana looked at the 7-foot mantis alien, then at the holographic display showing what appeared to be a PowerPoint presentation with 247 slides, then back at Jakar. Or, she said, we could just practice some actual moves. Jakar's compound eyes did something that Diana's cultural sensitivity training hadn't covered. Practice? As in physical contact? That's generally how combat training works, yeah. But the theoretical models suggest. Theorist Jakar, Diana interrupted, using her patient instructor voice that usually preceded someone getting their ass kicked in training. How many physical fights have you been in? Fights? None. The Vrex species evolved beyond physical conflict approximately 47,000 cycles ago. We resolve disputes through judicial review and committee consensus. Right. And how's that working out? Extraordinarily well. We have a 0.01% violence rate across our entire population. Fantastic. So what happens if someone from a species that didn't evolve beyond violence decides to punch you? Jakar made a chittering sound that his translator rendered as contemplative concern. Such a scenario would be unprecedented. Yeah, well, I'm here to precedent you. Diana moved to the center of the mat, which felt less like a training surface and more like standing on a memory foam mattress that had given up on life. Come here. We're going to start with basic defensive positioning. Administrative Construct 7291, who'd insisted she call it Barry, materialized nearby, its holographic sphere pulsing nervously. I should remind both participants that Concordat Safety Protocol 15C requires... Barry, buddy, I've read the protocols, all 40 pages, twice. Because you kept sending them to me, Diana gestured at Jakar. Come on, theorist, time to test those theories. Jakar approached with the confidence of someone who'd spent years studying something without ever actually doing it. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the station's overly bright lights, and he moved with careful precision, like someone who'd never experienced the concept of tripping. Now, Diana said, falling into her instructor mode, the first thing you need to understand is that most fights aren't about strength. They're about leverage, positioning, and reaction time. She demonstrated a basic stance. See how my weight is distributed? Try it. Jakar attempted to mimic her position, which would have been more successful if his leg joints bent in the same direction as human legs. He ended up in something that looked like a yoga pose designed by an alien who'd only heard yoga described over a bad phone connection. Okay, we'll work on that, Diana said diplomatically. Let's try something simpler. Grab my wrist. Grab? Yeah, like grip it. Gently. This seems aggressive. It's training. Training isn't aggressive. It's educational violence. Jakar made another sound that the translator couldn't parse. Educational violence. Look, on Earth, we practice fighting so we know how to not fight better. It's a whole thing. Just grab my wrist. After approximately 30 seconds of visible internal debate, Jakar reached out with his primary manipulator and gripped Diana's wrist. His grip was surprisingly firm, not painful, but definitely present. Good, Diana said encouragingly. Now watch what I do with my free hand. That's when everything went sideways. Jakar, deeply focused on maintaining his grip and watching her free hand, leaned forward to get a better view. His secondary arm, the one Diana hadn't been paying attention to because she'd been raised on a planet where people only had 2 arms, swung forward as he shifted his weight. His chitinous elbow connected directly with Diana's nose. The impact wasn't hard. On a scale of getting hit in the nose, it ranked somewhere between walked into a cabinet door and sparring partner telegraphed a punch. But it was sudden, unexpected, and right on the bridge of her nose where all the sensitive bits lived. Diana's eyes immediately started watering, which was just standard human physiology's way of saying, "Hey, something just hit your face." Her nose throbbed. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her vision. And then, before her conscious brain could file the paperwork to stop her, muscle memory took over. 20 years of training, thousands of hours on mats, in rings, in training halls where instructors screamed, "React," until it became instinct. Every repetition, every drill, every time someone had told her, "Don't think, just move," all of it compressed into a single moment. Her elbow came up and around in a perfect strike. Textbook form. Hip rotation, shoulder engagement, controlled power. She was holding back. She knew she was holding back, pulling at least 90% of her strength because this was a training accident, and Jakar was a student, and she wasn't actually trying to hurt him. Her elbow connected with Jakar's face. The sound was like someone snapping a thick plastic ruler, or maybe stepping on a large crab. Or possibly both happening simultaneously in a nightmare designed by a sound engineer who specialized in things that make you immediately regret your life choices. Jakar made a noise that Diana's great-grandmother would have called a death rattle and collapsed onto the mat with all the grace of a mannequin falling off a truck. Time did that thing where it suddenly remembered it was supposed to be moving. Diana stood there, her nose still throbbing, her eyes still watering, staring down at the heap of alien that had just experienced Earth's most basic self-defense reflex. "Oh, fuck," she whispered. The alarms started. Not subtle alarms, not "please proceed to the nearest exit in an orderly fashion" alarms. These were full-throated, air raid siren, "we're all going to die" alarms that made Diana's molars vibrate, and her fight-or-flight response suggest that maybe flight was the better option here. "Medical emergency," Barry announced, his holographic sphere now strobing red like a nightclub for people having panic attacks. "Medical emergency, Vrex exoskeleton, structural integrity compromised, unprecedented kinetic trauma event, initiating crisis protocols." "I didn't mean to. He hit me first," Diana said, which sounded ridiculous even as she was saying it. The doors burst open, all of them, simultaneously, like someone had decided that regular door opening was insufficient for the gravity of the situation and had just hit the open everything button. Medical teams flooded in wearing hazmat suits that looked designed for handling radioactive xenomorphs. They swarmed Jakar with scanners, emergency foam, and equipment that Diana sincerely hoped wasn't body bags. She took a step back and realized that every other being in the vicinity, station personnel, other potential trainees, maintenance bots, Possibly the station's houseplants were backing away from her with the kind of speed usually reserved for explosive decompression or free buffets. The air shimmered, and High Overseer Kelvoth materialized in the center of the training facility. They looked like a jellyfish that had achieved enlightenment and middle management simultaneously, translucent, floating, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that Diana's 3-hour cultural briefing suggested indicated extreme diplomatic concern. Human, Kelvoth's voice emanated from everywhere and nowhere, like a surround sound system designed by someone who thought personal space was a suggestion. Explain. He hit my nose, Diana said, pointing at her still watering eyes. I reacted. That's it. That's the whole thing. You, Kelvoth pulsed in a way that made Diana think of loading bars and impending doom. You secreted fluid from your optical organs, you experienced facial trauma, and you remained conscious and responsive. Yeah, that's pretty normal for... And then, Kelvoth continued, you executed a precision retaliatory strike that compromised Vrek's exoskeletal integrity. A Vreks. The Vrek species has not experienced combat-related injury in recorded history. Diana looked at her hands, her completely normal human hands that had done nothing more than execute a basic elbow strike she'd learned in her first month of training when she was 19 years old. I was holding back, she said weakly. Holding back? Kelvoth's bioluminescence intensified. Barry, display the strike analysis. A holographic replay materialized, showing Diana's elbow strike in slow motion. Numbers and trajectory lines appeared, calculating force, velocity, impact zones. It looked like someone analyzing a missile strike rather than a minor training accident. Human Instructor Kowalski, Kelvoth said with the gravity of someone delivering a terminal diagnosis. You are hereby classified as a Category 5 lethal organism pending full investigation and threat assessment. Category 5? That seems... Barry, initiate Apex Protocol. Send emergency transmission to Galactic Concordat High Command. Kelvoth turned to face Diana fully, their entire body pulsing with urgent patterns. Message: Human has demonstrated Predator-class combat capabilities previously undocumented in Concordat encounters. Request immediate guidance on containment and Earth quarantine protocols. Quarantine? Diana gestured helplessly at Jakar, who was being loaded onto an anti-grav stretcher, while medical personnel muttered in concerned whistles and clicks. It was an accident. Accidents, Kelvoth said, do not result in structural compromise of Vrek's biology. Diana watched the medical team rush Jakar out of the facility. She could see his compound eyes tracking movement, so he was at least conscious. That was good. That was something. Around her, the station's population maintained a careful 15-foot perimeter, like she was radioactive, or maybe just human. Lieutenant Kowalski, Kelvoth said, you will be escorted to secure quarters pending investigation. Do not resist. Do not engage in any further educational violence. Can I at least... Now. 2 security officers, one who looked like a very concerned otter and another who resembled a floating crystal cluster, gestured toward the exit. Neither of them came within arm's reach. As Diana was escorted out of the training facility, alarms still wailing, she caught a glimpse of a holographic news feed on a nearby display. It was already updating. Breaking. Human demonstrates unprecedented violence. Station Harmony, 7 in lockdown. Diana Kowalski, who had only wanted to serve her tour, get promoted, and maybe find a decent pierogi somewhere in this corner of the galaxy, realized that she'd just become the most dangerous thing in Concordat space. And all because someone had booped her nose at Ars 847 station time. Diana's secure quarters turned out to be a room that had clearly been designed by someone who'd watched every prison movie ever made and decided subtlety was for cowards. The walls were transparent, some kind of reinforced material that let everyone outside observe her like she was a particularly dangerous zoo exhibit. The furniture was bolted to the floor. There were no sharp edges anywhere, which Diana found insulting since she'd just proven she didn't need objects to be dangerous. The food arrived via drone, an actual drone piloted remotely that deposited a tray on a platform and then retreated so fast it nearly crashed into the doorframe. "This is ridiculous," Diana muttered to herself, poking at something that claimed to be nutritionally optimized protein synthesis, but looked like someone had given up halfway through making scrambled eggs. Barry materialized outside the transparent wall, maintaining a respectful, or terrified, distance. "Lieutenant Kowalski, I've been asked to inform you that a xenobiological research team will be arriving to conduct a threat assessment interview." "A threat assessment?" "Barry, I tapped a guy who accidentally hit my nose. On Earth, this is what happens in literally every martial arts class with beginners." "Yes, well, the Concordat has no frame of reference for martial arts classes or beginners accidentally hitting instructors." Barry's sphere pulsed apologetically. "To them, you're an unprecedented phenomenon. I'm a gym teacher who knows how to throw an elbow. You're a human who remained functional after facial trauma and executed a retaliatory strike that incapacitated Avrex. Do you understand how that looks to species that experience shock from minor injuries?" Diana pressed her fingers against her temples. "How's Jakar?" "Stable. His exoskeleton is regenerating, though the process will take several cycles." "He's confused. He keeps asking his medical team if you intended to establish dominance or if it was a teaching methodology." "It was a reflex, a completely normal human reflex." "Yes, that's what concerns them." 3 hours later, the research team arrived. They approached Diana's quarters like she was a bomb that might detonate if someone sneezed wrong. Leading them was Dr. Prin Tal, a Kess who looked like someone had crossed a heron with an anxiety disorder and given it 4 eyes that blinked independently. "Human Lieutenant Kowalski," Prin Tal said, their translator rendering their voice as perpetually worried. "I am Dr. Prin Tal, xenobiological research specialist. I have been assigned to document your capabilities." "My capabilities are pretty standard for humans," Diana said, trying to sound non-threatening, which was apparently impossible now. "I'm just a combat instructor." "Yes, we've reviewed your file." Printal produced a holographic display showing Diana's service record. "It says you've trained over 2,000 humans in hand-to-hand combat. This is disturbing." "Disturbing? It's my job." "You train thousands of your species in violence?" One of Printal's colleagues, a slug-like being whose nameplate read Junior Researcher Glipnax, made a sound that the translator rendered as horrified fascination. "It's not violence, it's self-defense." "There's a difference." "Please." Printal gestured to the display which now showed security footage of the incident. "We must understand what happened. We've analyzed the footage 247 times at various speeds." Diana watched herself elbow Jakar for the 248th time. It still looked like a completely normal defensive reaction to her, but she was beginning to understand that normal was relative. "When theorist Jakar struck your olfactory intake structure," Printal began clinically, "you immediately secreted fluid from your optical organs. That's just what happens when you get hit in the nose. It's tears, automatic response." "You remained conscious." "Yeah? Why wouldn't I?" All 4 of Printal's eyes blinked in sequence. "The impact should have caused neural disruption, yet you showed no signs of disorientation. In fact, they zoomed in on Diana's face in the footage. Your pupils dilated, your stance shifted, and your respiration increased. These are predator stalking indicators. Those are adrenaline responses, fight or flight. Every human does this." "Every human," Glipnax repeated slowly, "experiences combat preparation responses from minor facial trauma?" Yes, it's evolution. Our ancestors got chased by things with big teeth. The research team exchanged looks that Diana's cultural training hadn't prepared her to interpret, but she was pretty sure translated to, "Oh shit." Lieutenant, Printal continued, in your statement, you claimed you were holding back during the strike. Can you elaborate? I didn't use full force. If I had, I would have. Diana stopped, realizing where this was going. Look, I pulled the hit, significantly. It was maybe 10% of what I could do. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that preceded very bad decisions. 10%, Printal repeated. You're claiming the strike that compromised Vrek's exoskeletal integrity was 1/10 of your combat capacity. Probably less, honestly. I wasn't trying to hurt him. It was reflex. More silence. Glipnax made a sound like a deflating balloon. We need to understand human pain tolerance, Printal said finally. You mentioned a friend who walked off a broken ankle. Yeah, Sarah. Snapped it during a training exercise, finished the course, then went to medical. She continued physical activity with a fractured skeletal support structure? It wasn't that bad of a break. There are gradients of broken? Diana was beginning to understand that this conversation was making things worse, not better. Look, humans are tough. We evolved to be persistence hunters. We can sweat, which means we can cool ourselves during extended activity. We can function through injuries that would stop other animals. It's just what we do. You're describing voluntary pain suppression, Printal said, their feathers ruffling. The ability to continue function during physical trauma. I'm describing not being a baby about minor injuries. Minor, Glipnax whispered. She calls structural damage minor. The interview continued for another hour, with Diana desperately trying to explain that humans were completely normal, and the research team becoming increasingly convinced that humanity was a species of unkillable combat-adapted predators who trained their young in lethal techniques and considered broken bones a temporary inconvenience. Finally, Printal stood. Thank you, Lieutenant. You've been enlightening. Does this mean I can leave? Absolutely not. You're far too dangerous. After they left, Diana sat on her bolted-down bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere beyond the station, she knew the research team was compiling their findings. She could almost imagine the report. Human demonstrates pain tolerance, combat reflexes, and casual attitude toward violence. Species-wide threat assessment, catastrophic. She was wrong. It was worse. 12 hours later, Barry appeared with news that made Diana's stomach drop. Lieutenant Kowalski, the Galactic Concordat Military Analysis Division, has been reviewing Earth's cultural database. Our cultural database? Yes, your species uploaded extensive media to the Concordat Cultural Exchange Network. Films, sporting events, entertainment programs. Oh no. They've been analyzing what they believe to be documentary evidence of human society, specifically something called mixed martial arts, boxing, and action cinema. Those are entertainment. Sports. Fiction. Yes, well, they've concluded these are educational recordings of human combat training and gladiatorial culture. Diana's vision went spotty. Barry, please tell me they understand the difference between real life and movies. They do not. They believe humanity maintains a warrior culture where physical combat is recreational, competitive, and broadcast for public consumption. We do, but it's not. Diana stopped. Wait, we kinda do, don't we? Lieutenant, there are currently 14 Concordat battle groups repositioning around your solar system. 14 what? Before Barry could answer, Diana's secure communication panel lit up. Colonel Briggs's face appeared, and Diana had never seen her commanding officer look so tired. Vasquez, Briggs started. Kowalski, sir. Right, Kowalski. What the hell did you do? There are 14 alien battle groups surrounding Earth. They're not hostile, but they're also not leaving, and, Briggs looked at something off-screen, they want you to train their entire military. Diana blinked. Their entire, what? Their military, Kowalski. All of it. Every branch. Every species. They think you're some kind of combat savant who can teach them human warfare methodologies. So congratulations, Lieutenant, you just got promoted. Sir, I just elbowed a guy who hit my nose. Well, that elbow just made you the most important person in human-alien relations. The Concordat High Council wants to meet with you. Can I refuse? Only if you want Earth under quarantine. The screen went dark. Diana sat in her transparent cell, surrounded by aliens who thought she was a lethal weapon, while 14 battle groups orbited her home planet. All because she'd done what any human would do when someone accidentally hit them in the face. I should have just let him PowerPoint me, she muttered. Barry, hovering nearby, made a sound that might have been digital sympathy. Lieutenant, for what it's worth, I think you're handling this remarkably well. Barry, there are battleships around Earth because of me. Yes, and the Concordat wants you to teach them how to be more like humans. Honestly, this might be the most peaceful first contact scenario in galactic history. How is this peaceful? No one's shooting. Yet. Diana dropped her head into her hands. It was going to be a long assignment. High Overseer Kelvoth materialized in Diana's quarters exactly 18 hours after the battle groups arrived. Their jellyfish body pulsed with colors Diana had learned meant extremely serious diplomatic business that you cannot refuse. Lieutenant Kowalski, the Concordat offers you a choice. Does one of these choices involve me going home? No. Choice 1. You train Concordat security forces in human combat methodologies. Choice 2. Earth remains under protective quarantine while we study your species from a safe distance. Diana rubbed her temples. So this is extortion with extra steps? We prefer mutually beneficial diplomatic arrangement with consequences. Of course you do. Diana stood, her bolted-down chair scraping the floor. Fine, I'll train your people, but we're doing this my way, which means no more treating me like I'm radioactive. Agreed. We'll reduce your threat classification to Category 3. How generous. 3 cycles later, Diana stood in a proper training facility. Still aggressively clean, but at least it had actual equipment, facing 30 alien trainees from 7 different species. They looked at her the way medieval peasants probably looked at dragons. All right, Diana said, clapping her hands together and watching half the class flinch. We're going to start with basic warm-up exercises. Everyone spread out. Give yourself arm's length of space. The aliens shuffled apart with the coordination of people who'd never done group exercise in their lives. First exercise, jumping jacks. Watch me, Diana demonstrated, arms and legs moving in sync. The Vrex delegates attempted to mimic her and immediately tangled their multiple limbs into configurations that looked like organic pretzels. One of them, a female named Silnara, managed to fall over despite the low gravity. Okay, maybe not jumping jacks for everyone, Diana muttered. Let's try push-ups. The Kess, with their bird-like anatomy, stared at the ground like Diana had asked them to voluntarily drown. You want us to position ourselves prone? One asked nervously. It's not a submission ritual, it's exercise. Look. Diana dropped and demonstrated 10 perfect push-ups. A Kess named Thripcole slowly lowered himself to the mat, beak nearly touching the surface, trembling. He managed 1 push-up before his arms gave out. I'm dying, he gasped. You're not dying, you're building muscle. This is torture. This is literally what human children do in school. The class went silent. Your young do this? Silnara asked, still on the floor from her jumping jack attempt. Starting around age 5, yeah. More horrified silence. An observer from the Concordat Military Analysis Division, a crystalline being named Quartz Pattern 7, was frantically taking notes. Diana caught snippets. Condition juveniles for combat readiness from early development stages. Species-wide militarization. It's not militarization, it's gym class. What? Quartz Pattern 7 asked slowly. Is gym class? Mandatory physical education for health. You mandate combat training for health purposes? Diana wanted to scream. Instead, she moved on to the next exercise, basic break falls. When you fall, you need to know how to fall safely, she explained, demonstrating a simple side break fall. Tuck, roll, slap the mat to distribute impact. She executed the move smoothly and stood up. The class stared. You practiced falling? Thripcole asked. Yeah, everyone falls. It's better to know how to do it without getting hurt. Your species has techniques to survive defeat, Quartz Pattern 7 said, crystals vibrating with what Diana assumed was excitement. This explains human persistence in historical conflicts. It explains why we don't break our tailbones every time we slip on ice. But the narrative was already forming. By the end of the first training cycle, word had spread throughout the station. Humans taught their young how to lose without dying. They practiced violence in controlled environments. They had developed entire systems for experiencing pain safely. The breakthrough came during sparring training. Diana had introduced protective gear, headgear, gloves, foam padding, and explained the concept of controlled contact. You practice fighting, she explained, so you understand fighting. Then you don't have to actually fight. Silnara, who'd been Diana's most dedicated student despite initial clumsiness, raised one of her forearms. So we engage in ritualized combat to prevent actual combat? Exactly. This is, Silnara's translator struggled. Brilliant? Insane? Both? Very human, Diana agreed. The graduation demonstration was attended by half the Concordat leadership. Diana had chosen Silnara as her demonstration partner, and they moved through a carefully choreographed sparring sequence. Light contact, controlled strikes, proper defensive positioning. When Diana landed a gentle touch to Silnara's midsection, the Vrex tapped her own chest twice. The universal signal they'd established for, "I acknowledge the hit." The audience erupted in chaos. She surrendered without injury, someone shouted. They've established dominance hierarchy through non-lethal combat. The human showed mercy. Diana and Silnara exchanged confused looks. Ambassador Tazara, a being that resembled a walking crystal formation, approached as the crowd buzzed with energy. Lieutenant Kowalski, we have been profoundly wrong about your species. I've been saying that for, you are not mere predators. You are evolved predators who have transcended base violence. You have weaponized education itself. Tazara's crystals chimed with what Diana hoped was approval. The Concordat Council wishes to extend an unprecedented offer. Earth shall be granted a seat on the High Military Council. Diana blinked. Because I taught gym class in space? You have given us something we never possessed. The ability to prepare for conflict without experiencing it. Do you understand the implications? That you all desperately need better physical education programs? That humanity may have solved the fundamental problem of peaceful species surviving in a dangerous galaxy? Diana looked at Silnara, who was practicing her defensive stance with obvious pride. She looked at the other trainees, who were actually sweating, a development that had caused 3 medical alerts in the first session. She looked at the Concordat leadership, who were treating basic self-defense training like she'd just handed them the secrets of the universe. I just taught people how to throw punches safely, Diana said. Yes, Tazara replied, and that changes everything. 6 cycles later, Diana stood in the station's observation deck watching transport ships arrive. Each one carried human instructors, martial artists, boxers, MMA fighters, even a yoga instructor who'd somehow gotten flagged as a flexibility combat specialist. This is insane, Diana muttered. This is diplomacy, Colonel Briggs said from the comm panel. Earth went from that interesting planet with the bipeds to the most requested military advisors in the galaxy, because you elbowed a guy. Diana looked at her new rank insignia, Galactic Combat Education Liaison. She'd mentally translated it as Space Gym Teacher. Sir, they're reorganizing their entire military doctrine around human training methods. They're building weight rooms on every major station. And they're paying Earth a fortune for it, Briggs replied. 47 treaties signed this week. Take the win, Kowalski. Diana made her way to the medical wing. Jakar was in a recovery pod, his exoskeleton showing new growth where she'd cracked it. Instructor Kowalski, he said, I've been practicing the defensive techniques. Well, the theoretical versions. Jakar, I'm sorry I broke your face. You didn't break my face with malice. You broke it with teaching. I mostly broke it because you booped my nose and I have reflexes. Yes, reflexes. Jakar shifted in his pod. Humans evolved to react without thinking. You've turned survival instinct into education. I understand now why you reacted as you did. And I'm grateful. Grateful that I cracked your exoskeleton? Grateful that you showed us what we were missing. The galaxy has been peaceful for so long, we forgot how to be strong. Diana felt something shift in her chest. Thanks, Jakar. Now finish healing so I can actually train you properly. I look forward to it, Instructor. She found High Overseer Kelvoth at the central viewing port. Do you understand what you've done, Lieutenant? Kelvoth asked. You've given the galaxy something it never had, the ability to practice war without waging it. Diana sipped her drink, still not coffee. You all made this way more profound than it needed to be. I just hit a guy who hit me. What else can humans teach us, I wonder? Diana's eyes drifted to the docking bay, where a transport was unloading equipment. Soccer balls, basketballs, and what looked suspiciously like dodgeball equipment. Oh no, she whispered. Is something wrong? Someone uploaded Earth's sports database to the Concordat network, didn't they? Yes, especially something called ice hockey. The violence appears ritualized, and Lieutenant, why do you look concerned? Diana imagined explaining contact sports to aliens who thought push-ups were torture. Rugby, American football, dodgeball. Her communicator beeped. Request immediate consultation on team sports integration. Concordat species demanding access to competitive ball-based activities. Diana closed her eyes. Kelvoth, I'm going to need a bigger training facility. Why? Because you're about to learn that humans don't just practice fighting. We've turned literally everything into competitive contact activities. She pulled up a video of a rugby match. Kelvoth watched humans deliberately crash into each other, fight over an oval ball, then help each other up. They're attacking each other for recreation, Kelvoth said slowly. Wait until you see dodgeball. What's dodgeball? Organize throwing things at children. It's a school activity. Kelvoth's entire body pulsed with colors Diana had never seen before. I'm beginning to think we've only scratched the surface of human combat culture. Oh, we absolutely have, Diana grinned. Welcome to Earth culture, Kelvoth. Through the viewport, more transport ships appeared. Diana could see the crates, sporting equipment, training manuals, protective gear. Somewhere on Earth, gym teacher Marcus Chen was boarding a shuttle. Completely unaware, he was about to explain dodgeball to a species that considered jumping jacks extreme. The station's speakers crackled. Human Instructor Kowalski to Training Base 7. Your students are requesting instruction on the push-up challenge. Please advise if this is safe. Diana laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time since arriving at Harmony 7. Tell them I'll be right there. And yes, it's safe. Mostly. Mostly, Lieutenant? Their arms are going to hurt tomorrow, but that's called progress. She walked through corridors, past aliens who no longer flinched, past training facilities humming with activity, past bulletin boards advertising human combat philosophy lectures and Introduction to Controlled Aggression Theory. All because she'd reflexively elbowed someone who'd accidentally hit her nose. Diana Kowalski, space gym teacher, smiled. This was going to be the weirdest, most ridiculous, most accidentally important job in human history. And she was absolutely going to make them run laps.